Okay, so we should be live. Hello, welcome everybody. There's quite a few people from the event that are already in the chat. Please let me know if my volume is good, and then we can just get started. Give me 1 second here, and then we will. There we go. Wonderful. So hello, welcome. Nice to see so many names and faces in here. So, like everyone else, I kind of just wrote notes on whatever I could find. I brought a package of 3x5 note cards in order to write everyone's notes down, but also to give my presentation. Because if you notice, I'm very much like I was a speech and debate person, so having a note card in hand is always helpful. Let's see here. So, the event. I know that almost everyone now has probably done some recap or another. I know that Anglo Ortho had a lovely conversation with Red Hawk already. Those two were wonderful speakers at the event. He did his own recap with one of the lovely gentlemen who was also there, whose advice and his area of expertise was really fantastic. So I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. That in the Distributist, I think last night gave his recap, which I didn't catch live. I'm only catching up now. I'm probably like 2 hours in. I loved being called Nega Turnip. That was hilarious. I thought that was quite funny. But I guess I'll start and tell my story from the beginning. So I originally, like I had talked about in the past, that I was originally going to do a speech on the geopolitics of the next regime, and that slowly has turned into maybe about a 50-page paper. And I said that I wanted to write more about it, so I guess I've kind of accomplished my New Year's resolution. But that was not the topic of the speech. So we'll talk about that when we get to the speakers itself. But I decided to drive, which was great. I rode with one of the other speakers who has now become a friend of mine, Oros Post, who's everyone's links should be in the description from either findmyfriends.net, which is ran by Charlemagne, or just their YouTube channels or Twitter accounts that you can find. So I rode with Oros Post. He's a fellow Texan, and we kind of just carpooled together. And we had a great time listening to all sorts of things, whether it was just old school country, Frank Zappa's variety of satirical lyrics, or just showing off our own taste in music and the such, which was always nice when you get to bond with somebody. And what made it even better is that he and I hung out the weekend prior to the event. So it was like already on top of getting to know somebody that much better and just going off of, just riffing together. It was really nice and taking turns driving. The weather was not all that bad. I don't think it was until we got closer to Tennessee when it started getting rainy. But you're gonna just get a play-by-play. Sorry, everybody. That's how I do things. Anytime that I would used to travel when I was a kid for college or whatnot, it was always just a back and forth of just giving it a play-by-play event. But I saw that someone asked how many people were there, so it was about 100 people. I think it was 98 even, which is pretty good because you want to get close, I guess, to that Dunbar's number. And I mean, what was nice about it is that everybody could sort of just like group off and whatnot, and have these conversations with one another, and then circle back and have conversations with different people after the speeches. So you'll forgive me if I drink a little bit throughout this stream because my voice is still not yet fully recovered. But we got there, and actually, before we even got to the check-in, hold on 1 second. Okay, that was much needed. I had to cough. Sorry there. My voice is still not fully recovered. But even before the event, actually, I had lunch with one of my patrons, with Oros, and we had this like hour-long conversation, just trying to kill the time. And it was one of those weird conversations that you have where it's what is it, where you have just a conversation on whatever you talk about at 3 a.m. where friends talk about things. So it was like philosophy and metaphysics, and finding out that one of my patrons who I've talked to on and off for quite some time, even before he was a supporter of mine, and just finding out that, like myself, he's also a catechumen of the Orthodox faith, which was really nice. I didn't know that. So That was good. And then checking in was just this absolute delight of seeing everybody in person. So while you all got to see me in the last week or so, right, whether it's various streams or even the AMA I did before the event, um, they've all seen my face prior, right? So Turnip, Semigog, Charlemagne, Clossington, virtually everyone in the crowd has already seen me. Like I mentioned, to those of you who were there, I think it is very good practice that you, if you're anonymous, right, like you've started to trust one another, that you humanize yourself before or after the show. Because no one wants to like looking at a profile picture for an hour and a half for a stream. I think that people really appreciate knowing that there was a face, and it's not just some obscure medieval king or monarch or frog profile picture. So Friday night starts with AA giving his speech. It was virtual, but I couldn't help but laugh because I walked into this event thinking, everyone else has these disparate opinions, and we love to go back and forth and argue or talk about, where we disagree, where someone is wrong, and we can get spicy, right, behind in chat and whatnot. And so going into the event, I was just thinking to myself, oh, good Lord, like this might get interesting because there's always these Q&A sessions after each speaker. So I was like, this might be interesting. To which I couldn't help but laugh. And I don't think that this will be anything that will be of a problem to talk about because he's published his speech. But his introduction, he's giving it late at night for us, which is like 2 a.m. his time. And he's talking about, well, I really hope that I'm glad I'm not in the United States because I looked up the lynching statistics for Tennessee, and I hope that they don't go up after I give this speech. So I'm thankful for they're not there. And then all of a sudden, someone in the crowd goes, yeah, we need to raise those numbers up. And someone immediately closes the door behind the ballroom entrance or wherever we were. So it's like, yes. Let's keep the spicy and the Fed posting to a minimum, shall we? But no, he gave an interesting speech about political formulas and why we need to be revolutionarily clear them out. The whole Jonathan Bowden clear them out meme that almost everyone loves to do. And to an extent, I found it particularly interesting because it kind of plays into willing to go all the way, right? And you're not willing to actually clear them out. You're still going to be playing by the rules of a regime that doesn't like you. And and now he's we're having this conversation now about a positive vision, but his by far, I thought, out of everyone's discussions and conversations, was the most revolutionary. So I have my my little pamphlet in front of me, so I can just go off the schedule and tell you all. You should buy the event book, by the way. The Scyldings guys. I just saw the UK one. Mine came in. Very well done. So by all means, that you should purchase. But even after the speech, the social time was wonderful. I don't think I went to bed till 1 o'clock that morning, which was totally fine because I wasn't the one speaking on Saturday morning, which I learned and found out that Turnip was speaking first. Scyldings. Okay, thank you, Clossington. I learned, however, that both Turnip and I were speaking first thing Saturday and Sunday morning, which I found to be incredibly entertaining because the reason why they told us that was because Turnip is too young to drink, and because of the transplant, I cannot drink. So the two sober people that would most likely not be on hungover were the ones speaking first thing in the mornings for the event. But it was nice, really, to just get to know everybody in person. Like, you've talked to these people for like the better half of a year, or at least for me, right? Being somewhat of the new guy, and seeing all of these people that you've talked to online and whatnot, just delightful. Getting to meet people, that you've streamed with or had conversation with or in group chats, and then just having people walk up to you and say, hello, like, I'm a big fan of your work, which is still a very humbling experience, because I'm certainly not used to that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But come social time, sort of a buffet style hotel, line up and go get your plate with breakfast, which was delightful. And of course, the event opened, I believe, during social time, during the introduction and orientation. Prude, no, not me. I thought it was very prudent that Turnip, on the suggestion of both Protestants, Catholics, and Orthodox Christians, provided some sort of opening prayer, which I thought was very fitting. But speaking of Turnip, he was the first speaker, and he offered a unique way, I thought, to have all of these disparate groups engage with one another, because we all do have our differences. Specifically, he talked about a sort of a confederacy model where you have a memorandum of understanding, and you have a way to avoid, infighting and, all sorts of back and forth. And so the other thing that he talked about was sort of having this rules of engagement. So, not just online, but also in the real world. So if you, for instance, are wanting to establish, I think someone brought this up during the Q&A, which I thought was really interesting. If someone wanted to bring up like an orthodox, like, farmers workers guild or whatever, how do I appropriately engage with other people that I may not agree with or that I might perceive as friendly but not really all that friendly? And I thought that Turnip having this discussion about how we can all get along, or at least how to properly engage with one another, was really good. And in part because there are a lot of people that sort of get clumped into what I guess you could call the dissident right or whatever. And but we all have these differences of opinions. And there'll always be these like bickering and infighting, which kind of prevents people from doing what they want. This can lead to purity spiraling. This can lead to people kicking them out, or just people not getting along all well together. I mean, for instance, there are plenty of people that fight globo homo that are not, Christians. In the same time that they're, either adhering to an Indo-European tradition or are actual practicing pagans. And of course, right, once you defeat the enemy, you then have to realize, oh, we have these fundamental differences of opinion. And of course, the whole Schmidt thing plays out, because even, you have to determine who's friend and who's foe. So the idea of having this sort of model of confederacy, the sort of disparate groups working together, interlinked, but doing their own thing, allows for people to, avoid the purity spiraling issue, avoid the big tent, and have conversations about what do me and my immediate group of people want to accomplish, which I, for one, thought was a really well done speech. And they were good talking points. And I really want this idea to be fleshed out further. So I really do hope that Turnip continues and has that conversation. So after Turnip brought on this this unique concept about rules of engagement, how to talk to other groups, and just doing your own thing, and rather than having this large big tent approach, you sort of got the slapdash of reality, sort of the wake up and smell the roses. So this was from Not Me, Not You. This was the second speech of the morning after Turnip. And this was one of the guys that had been there during the Stop the Steal rallies. I think he was there on January 6th. I don't recall him saying that. I think he mentioned it. But he says, things have only just gotten to, get bad. Things will get worse. And one should mentally and physically prepare themselves for what that looks like. Because most people haven't taken a punch. And most people don't know what it means when your livelihood is actually on the line. And he was thinking very just realistically, wake up and smell the coffee beans kind of deal. because he's just like, actual dissidents. We hear about a few of them. We hear about Solzhenitsyn, we hear about the Gulag Archipelago, but we don't talk about the people that are actually in the Gulag that are probably never going to have their names remembered and who will die there. And he says, you have yet to earn the title dissident. You need to physically prepare yourself for violence. And he wasn't saying this in a Fed posty way. He was saying this like literally most of the people in this room are academically white collar oriented. And odds are you probably haven't gotten into a fight. You haven't been into a life or death situation. And you've probably never had to pull, a weapon on anybody. So he's like, things will be hard. And you need to realize and wake up and understand just how difficult that will be. And I thought that by far was the most interesting speech from that morning, because so often when we talk on the online spheres, we talk about what that would look like. We talk about protesters. We talk about violence, but not too many of us have actually experienced that. So I for one, was very happy that that was a speech that was discussed. Afterwards, there was a short break, and then we had Clossington. Clossington was up next. And I thought that he gave probably the most like pro-Americana speech out of everybody there, which I greatly appreciated. Too often in these circles is there just nothing but sort of, just flagrant anti-Americanism. And I don't know if that's just mainly, the fact that there's a European overlap, but also because like we call it the gay, the globalist American empire. And I know that there are people that have issues with that label, myself included. But what I thought was really interesting about it is that Clossington gave this like really unapologetic, this is what I would like to do, which was the synthesis of like the longhouse issues that we have here, and this desire for space from Bronze Age pervert and the Bronze Age mindset. And he wanted to synthesize it with Italian futurism. And I thought this two very disparate concepts, and eventually you'll get to hear his speech in more detail with the event book, or if he chooses to release it. But I thought that trying to synthesize these ideals of what our current problem is, which is the long house of decay, this sort of matriarchal, there is no future for these men that have just turned into these soy bug men, and we have to do more to fight it and to take care of it. And he synthesizes it with Italian futurism. And what his synthesis is that we want to have this pioneer spirit moving towards the future. And it was this idea that America is innately this nation of waspy pioneers that conquered the country and built great things. The Empire State Building was built, I think he had said was one of the few places that was built in New York City that was like on time and under budget. But he was like, yeah, a couple of people died, but like, shouldn't that be the case with all great work, like with construction and pyramids and things like that? I don't imagine today, right, that that we would have that. I mean, well, even now in the replacement of the World Trade Center, which was the almost planned immediately after 9/11, like it's what, just barely finished, which is insane. And that was something that he talked about, was just less bureaucracy, less of this matrilineal longhouse living under the DMV style world. And from there, move forward and make something of yourself and look towards the future, have an appeal to heaven. This was a very New England sort of waspy thing, because he even made it out in a speech. He's just like, sorry, tradcaths, sorry, ortho bros, like America's an innately waspy, Protestant country, which very true. But it was a very well done presentation. And one of the highlights of it was just watching Dave, the distributist, just sort of look back and just smile the whole way through, which I thought was probably the most endearing part of the presentation, even though the speech itself was very good. But I know that those two have met in real life prior. So to just see them, have this friendship where your friend is just smiling, watching you talk, was probably the highlight, actually, in my personal opinion, the speech. So after that, we had lunch, which was, it was very good. I'm not going to complain. I think, it was Saturday. They gave us, I think it was chicken wings, which I was very glad that they weren't boneless, because the last thing that any internet, right-wing conference needs, right, is a bunch of people eating tendies for lunch. So I'm very glad that it was actual wings with the bones in them. Otherwise, it would have just been too on the nose. So yeah, and we'll get to the super chats at the end. But after lunch was sort of a planned presentation, but also an impromptu one, which I thought was really good. So the next gentleman who was up was Red Hawk, and I didn't know what was going to be talked about. And in fact, none of the speakers, actually talked with one another. We didn't consult one another about what we were talking about. So if you'll notice throughout these speeches that we all kind of converge, or there's some essence of synchronicity, you'll understand that, hey, maybe we're not off target because we didn't talk to one another. There wasn't a central theme to this. I mean, the theme of the event was strategies for navigating the ruins, but there wasn't any consultation between all of the speakers about what we were going to talk about. So for those of you who don't know, Red Hawk, and I know that I saw him in the chat. So if I'm giving you sort of this disingenuous, or I'm not giving you your proper dues, then correct me. But Red Hawk is sort of in the manosphere pickup artistry area. I think he mentioned that it was Rollo Tomasi was one of his bigger influences. So if you're familiar with sort of the red pill, the manosphere kind of world of men, then you'll kind of get an idea of where Red Hawk is coming from. And, there are people in these spheres that sort of have their own issues, mainly traditionalists, that kind of look at this and they have a raised eyebrow. But I had no idea what he was going to talk about when he was coming in. And he talked about, game, frame, muscle, and money, these things that should drive and give purpose to men in the material world. And it was very interesting because it was a praxology. That's how he argued it. Is that, listen, these don't have a metaphysical grounding. These are tools that I think that you could apply to the way that you want to live your life, which I thought was a very interesting way of looking at it. And I know that Anglo Ortho and Red Hawk had a recent conversation. I haven't watched it to its entirety, so I thought that was pretty interesting, and I would like to hear more about it because, again, he argues that it's for tools, whereas Anglo Ortho, I noticed in the conversation, I watched maybe like 20 minutes. I want to finish it. Where he's just like, well, I think the opposite. He's like, you should probably fast and pray and get married and have children. But he had left it there. Yeah, Red Hawk, I know that you had a good talk about this, and I want to hear more about it. I noticed that you're in the chat. And after that, what actually came afterwards was actually a impromptu speech by Yiz the Eunuch, whom I'm sure you have seen in many chats all over the internet. And she was kind enough to bring about, and I'm going to butcher his name, but she brought the copies of No White Guilt, or Going Free, so by the guys from the No White Guilt channel. And she talked about white positivism and sort of meme viruses, mind viruses, meme plexes. And she, pretty much talked about the going free rhetoric, the idea that, we shouldn't be Fed posting, we shouldn't be naming the J, because obviously those strategies don't work. We should just call it for what it is, and these people are blatantly anti-white, which I agree with. And I had I first streamed with Yiz, I think like last January, a year ago. And in a year's time, I was very anxious about not wanting to associate with sort of that sphere, in part because you have to break down that mental aspect in your mind about sort of like the aspect of race, especially as white people in the West in 2022 and 2021, where you want to call it out, but there's always that consequences of it. And that was an issue that I've been struggling with over the last year. But listening to her talk and actually talking to the No White Guilt guys, I understand where they're coming from. And I actually had a lot of respect for the fact that she went up there and gave probably like the most emotionally passionate speech for Saturday, where it was just this whole conversation about having the fact that there are no white anti-white aspects in education, and in every aspect now in our society, and we need to start having a positive vision for ourselves, which was nice because at the event there were hardcover copies, special edition of Imperium Press books, which was, I believe, Patriarcha from Robert Filmer, the collected works of Joseph de Maistre, and then there is this collection of Indo-European folk tales. So it was very fitting, and she brought, of course, for free for numerous copies of Going Free, which was very good on her. And she had said that the model from like critical race theory had basically had perfected the anti-white aspect of it institutionally, because now it's an education and your children will be raised to have like self-hatred and whatnot. And so we need to have a more positive vision, at least as sort of like a racially conscious one for positivity. And then they both did their Q&As, which I thought was very endearing for them both to do it together. So after that came this line of just like 3 speakers back to back that all had their own takes, which I greatly enjoyed. And we'll start with the one that probably stuck out to me the most. So my favorite speech of the event, well, actually my favorite like 3 speeches of the event, all came back to back Saturday evening. So the first one was from Anglo-Ortho, whom by far is probably my new favorite person that I have discovered. He has a YouTube channel, Anglo-Ortho, so go follow him. He actually did homework for us all that too many of us did not notice for the event. He talked about Kierkegaard. So, he gave a critique about the time that we spend, and sort of this materialist mindset, and it focusing on the metaphysics, and that we need to attain righteousness and intellectual humility, and that we can't focus so much on trying to reinvent or try and operate in a world without a metaphysical grounding. And it was very interesting because he kind of goes on this riff on Thomas Aquinas, which is always interesting. Aquinas and Augustine are kind of the orthodox whipping boys when it comes to understanding where Christianity goes wrong from a philosophical sense. But of course, in order to attain righteousness, one must be humble. And I thought that was rather fitting, because too often, at least on the online sphere of it all, do we try and illustrate these long-standing, visions and through lines of history. We try to have a take or an answer on everything. And I think that it's very important for us to, be humble intellectually. The Lord knows that, too oftentimes people will ask for what's your take on this, or what's the reactionary take on this. And most people try and give an answer. And I think that most of the time we need to be humble and be metaphysically grounded. And for us, it's like prayer, fasting, things such as that matter. So, and I think that that's important. And the fact that he was just talking about this was, I thought, very important. I have no words. It's a very good speech. And my notes are scribbled all over the place because there were just a lot of concepts and a lot of things that I wanted to add. So it was very good. And I just thought that it was probably the most important speech to discuss, because if we're going to constantly flail about and we're not going to be involved in anything other than just the now, the here, the issues about the day-to-day, and not really our religion, then that's going to be a problem. And so have some humility, attain righteousness. And of course, the nice thing about it, though, right, is that Anglo-Ortho went out of his way to not make this a very explicitly orthodox, speech. He says, for me, this is how I found it. I'm not saying that you should convert. I'm saying that you should find it in whatever tradition or practice that best adheres to you. So very nice for all the other non-Orthodox people in the room, the Protestants and the Catholics, which, in these spheres, right, always diverges into intellectual and interdenominational infighting, which is why if you ever go to my Telegram chat, that's like rule number 3, is no religious infighting, because I cannot stand it. So after Anglo-Ortho and the Q&A came radical liberation. And I thought, wow, this is a man that if you already know who he is, then you know that he's talked about his home, his sort of homesteading life, the land that he owns, the food that he grows, and his wife that homeschools and takes care of their 8 children. And the fact that, he didn't talk about himself, rather the men that he's met throughout his life, was very interesting, because so many of us in these spheres, especially the younger men, myself included, all look to Radlib and we're like, that's the guy. That's the gentleman that we want to be like and to associate with, and to have a life that is similar to ours. We all want our wife and our 8 kids and our homestead where we grow our own food, and we bring home the bacon for our wives and kids, and we have a stream, and we have our own squire turnip next to us. But instead, he went through all of the people that ever influenced him. And this is a man who I'm sure that has spent quite some time in libertarian circles for over 30 years. And it was almost like a libertarian Forrest Gump. And Radlib is definitely how we win, yes. And he talked about all the men that he had met throughout his life that had influenced him. And it was name-dropping in the most humble sense, whether he had met Paul Gottfried or Hans Hermann Hoppe or various other thinkers, whether they were religious or political. He was always humbled by the advice, and he always got to know these people. And he managed to meet a man before he had died, before the war, Knut Ledin, and seeing this old European, the old world man, before the post-war boomer truth regime, Nuremberg paradigm kind of deal. And he had said that, wow, we lost something in the First World War. And I don't think we'll ever get that back. But Radlib just offered all of this advice from both his wife, from all the men that he had met, all of these political figures. And it was just really, really humbling to see him be humble, because so many of us look up to him and we ask him for advice. And Lord knows everyone at the event asked his wife for advice. He brought his wonderful wife, Heather, to the event, and she was an absolute delight to talk to. And there was not a single moment, I think, where she was alone at the event, because men would just be mogging her for questions. They would be like, well, how do you do all of this? How do you manage to accomplish all this, or have a family, or and homeschool and raise, and garden? And it was just really, really intense, because just these people have so much wisdom for us, the younger people that are kind of online and deracinated and want these things, but they don't know how to attain it. And the fact that, hey, we had this role model who could offer that advice, while at the same time Radlib is up there on the stage telling us his advice and telling us what his wisdom came from, was a really good speech. So these two back-to-back, I thought, were very complimentary of one another, Anglo-Ortho and Radlib. And then after that was Dave Distributist, to which was probably the most entertaining aspect of the night, because it was basically the Distributist's greatest hits. Because Dave is, always gets asked the question, and he did answer the question. Dave, why do you always go watch BreadTube? It seems kind of masochistic for you to do so. And he brought up this wonderful video, and we sort of talked about why the left, always loves and enjoys these kind of fantasies. It was that Chobani commercial where it was like the futuristic farming with solar panels, and everyone's living this like techno-agrarian lifestyle, and there are no white people in the ad. And magically, outside of whatever they eat, right, it's always the Chobani yogurt that's in the fridge. And Dave did a great time talking about unreality, how these people always pursue fantasy. They don't necessarily pursue, what it is that would actually make their political aspects, actually to be accomplished. They enjoy the fantasy. And BreadTube is probably the epitome of this. And it was good for him to talk about it, because so often do we find our opponents always lost in the fantasy that they're always constantly trying to pursue, while they're having all these institutional aspects of power. He called it unreality, which I thought was very fitting, because that's why they're always pursuing the newest vision. That's why they're always constantly revising things so it fits their vision. But at the end of the day, it didn't work out, or it doesn't work out. And I almost wanted to, and I'm kind of glad that I didn't get to have my question asked at the Q&A, because this aspect of unreality or trying to find escapism through advertisements and people wanting to say, yes, this is the life I want to live, I feel like can also equally affect the right wing as well, especially when it comes to the rather notorious anime question that gets asked every now and again on the right wing. And then after that, we had dinner, which was a lovely time. I learned that I'm not very as sociable as I'd like to have been, but it was nice to see everyone. I was just taken aback watching everything. And then after that, we organized a cigar stream live. Excuse me. I am still terribly congested. But it was a cigar stream live, and we had covered 2 books. We had covered Thomas 777's Steel Storm, and then we also covered Jonathan Bowden's Why I'm Not a Liberal, which was a fantastic conversation. I think it was like 8 of us on a panel. I know that there was Paul Fahrenheit, myself, Turnip, 21st Reaction, Rad Lib, Charlemagne, and Clossington for sure. And it was just very fantastic to all of just be on the stage. And I got to see an image of it. And I don't think this will ever be released, but an image of all of us there just sort of talking and going back and forth on these books, and how everyone was dressed differently. I was dressed on Saturday in a gray suit. I might post a picture, and if you're a patron, you've already seen it. I took a selfie of myself in a very gray American cut style suit with a brown cardigan and a bright orange tie. And I was told I looked very English, which I guess makes sense because I've already been told I look like Oswald Mosley, which I'm already not looking forward to in that sort of comparison, but that's okay. But no, it was a really good time. And then after that, the social hour. And yes, you can get Why I'm Not a Liberal. Both of these books you can buy on Imperium Press. We worked very closely with Imperium Press to make this all happen. So yeah, no, it was fantastic. So Imperium Press, you can buy those books there, both of them. And both books, Steel Storm and Why I'm Not a Liberal, are very short reads, so you can get through them in a day and digest them. Thomas 77's work, I finally picked it up after this discussion because I had only read snippets. Wow, like I actually want to know how the story goes because it's not over. Like this book wasn't a complete story. So yeah, I mean that was a good thing here to keep in mind. But yeah, no. And then yeah, so after that came just the social hour, and afterwards was the I'm reading the chat. Sorry there. So after that was just the social hour, and I think we all stayed up till 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning just chatting with people. And what was the most surreal thing? My apologies. The most surreal thing about it is the issue of we were in the old speakers room, and I think it was just Turnip, myself, and Charlemagne. We were all just sitting one next to each other. And there was this crowd of like 20 people just sort of chatting back and forth with us, sharing their experience and listening to what we had to hear, listening to ourselves about our perspective on things, asking questions, a little bit about our lives and getting to know us personally, which I thought was just absolutely surreal because it's like here we are at 12:30 in the morning. People have their drinks in hand and they're just talking about, hey, let's get to know you. Or, hey, what's your take on this? Or, how did you get to where you are now? Talking about sort of our political evolution to how we got to here. And I just thought it was very surreal because there's Charlemagne, and then there's Turnip, and then there's me, and there's this crowd in front of me. And it was just a very humbling and sort of awe-inspiring experience where you're getting to meet your patrons, you're getting to meet your subscribers, you're getting to meet people that went to this event. And it was a very small amount, but at the same time, it's just like, wow, you get to put faces and names to the people in the chat, which I just thought was just wonderful. So that was humbling. Although I did learn that I get tired way more easily than I used to since the transplant. I'm not really one to party or anything like that. So getting tired very easily and grumpy, well, very easy. Come Sunday, Turnup was very kind to have sort of a non-denominational chanting of the Psalms, which I thought was very beautiful for all the Christians there. I went outside and I did some morning prayers myself. And that was, it's always nice though to see people engaged in their faith. So I gave my speech at first thing in the morning for obvious reasons because I cannot drink. And there we go. I was not hungover. And for those of you who were there, you kind of got to see how it went. For those of you who weren't, it was sort of an extension of the Real Talk on digital deracination, but I concretized it to offer actual strategies to help people bring those out from the real, from the digital into the real. Because, you know, this event has 100 people. It doesn't have the tens of thousands of people that we attract or that we have listened to us. And of course, it was always nice to, you know, give a presentation. I did, of course, doing speech and debate was very easy for me to just walk around and engage with the audience, give eye contact. It's like I never left my my speech element, you know. And then, of course, for those in the chat who were wondering, well, it was a Sunday, Prude. What were you doing? I did have a pair of black socks with green frogs on them, so the meme or the coziness of Frog of the Week did not leave us. But you know, my emphasis, of course, during the Q&A as well as in the speech itself is that too often on the internet we focus so much on the grand narratives, these grand battles about politics. And, you know, I'm a big emphasis on localism. And, you know, I just said, listen, bring someone to a city council meeting or a county commissioner's court. And if they're willing to sit through the 4 hours of boring bullshit and actually listen and stay there for the 5 minutes of public comment, then you have found someone worth working with and saving. And then after me was 21st Reaction, whom I had no idea what he looked like. I've always seen sort of his profile picture on Twitter. I know that he's in the traditional, you know, Catholic Settlers Lament sphere. And in fact, God bless him, he brought a Settlers Lament t-shirt and he hung it up on the podium. And he had his prayer cards as well with him. But 21st, despite our differences in faith, I'm not a Catholic, but he gave the most unapologetic defense of Christianity that I had seen in a while. And he had said that the right needs Christianity, the right needs Christ. And while, you know, he was prepared, he brought the defenses, he brought the apologia, he brought everything that he needed to make the case. And just for an hour straight, this kid is ready to defend himself, you know, and his faith and why it's important and why you should believe it, why there's historical, you know, the historical aspect of Christ, the miracles that have been performed. You know, it was very nice to see an actual on the ground in real life defense about, you know, one's faith in Christianity, because too often it gets ignored. Or too often it gets the eye roll from, say, atheists or non-Christians about, Christ cucks are in the chat or on the stream or whatever. And I was just very glad that someone said, you know, screw you to those people, and gave a very decent and improper and a very proper defense of Christianity. So despite our denominational differences in our churches, it was very nice to see this reaction. Afterwards, we had lunch, which was very nice. It was always nice getting to know people and chatting with, you know, all sorts of groups and crowds, listening to various conversations about, you know, the truckers or Ukraine. And this was before the invasion, mind you, so things were always very different. And then afterwards, Paul Fahrenheit gave a speech. And Paul Fahrenheit offered a discussion on Spengler and Yaki's Imperium, which... if there was one guy out of all of the events here who decided not to treat this like an academic sort of conference with papers and reading, it was definitely Paul. Paul talked about sort of the cycles of history, you know, the spring, summer, autumn, and winter periods. Had the famous paintings, of course, of civilizational decline. And he talked about Caesarism and what's to come next and what will happen. But the way he presented it, had the most gusto. Like, this was something that you would see at a political rally. And I'm not talking CPAC and I'm not talking Trump. I'm talking about if someone were to go out of their way today and start an actual dissident right political party, this would be the guy that I want giving speeches time and time and time and time again. Because this man was adamant, this man yelled, this man got people riled up, and it felt, as if it was, Caesar himself addressing the Senate. It felt almost as if, it was a general approaching and appreciating his men and offering them the speech before the cavalry charge, which was incredibly powerful. And I couldn't help but laugh because he had mentioned Morgoth. A lot of us did. I mentioned Morgoth. Radlib mentioned Morgoth, and Paul Fahrenheit did. And Paul Fahrenheit said, "Oh, you have to be completely insane like Morgoth to read The Decline of the West, both volumes from cover to cover, and understand them." I couldn't help but chuckle. I was like, "Oh, good. Morgoth and I are in the same camp. We're both insane. We've both read Decline of the West cover to cover." So I'm in good company apparently. But Paul had as well as a slideshow presentation. His Q&A was very good. He knows what he wants to accomplish, which I greatly appreciate. This is a man that wants to write the next great American novel. He wants to do what Tolkien did for fantasy. He wants to do that for the United States. And I can relate to him a lot because both he and I have family that fought for the Confederacy. And so it was very nice to just have someone that we could riff back and forth about Civil War history. So he considers himself an aristocratic gentleman, and to which he plays the role very, very, very well. So yeah, like he said, we are in this together, and he wants us to call it out. Although it was very interesting. So if you know Sam Hyde's Twitter handle, then you'll get a clue of where Paul Fahrenheit thinks the next Caesar will come from. So after that was my good friend Oros Post, who had given me his speech and his rundown the weekend prior when he and I had hung out for that weekend. But it was very nice to hear an economic speech. And it was very nice to hear someone sort of portray how the system is so fragile, how it operates, and how the decline can actually be measured, talking about it in real economic terms. And it was really nice because as soon as I'm listening to him speak, I look to my right and Radlib perks up. He's like, an economic speech. You can just sort of see him lean in and start taking notes and start listening, which was, it was very good and a very engaging Q&A. And although I couldn't help but laugh because while he's speaking, just outside, Mrs. Radlib is hosting this sort of club, so to speak, or a Q&A round table session where they're asking about homeschooling in comparison to government schools and things like that. While at the same time, Mr. Radlib himself is listening to this economic speech and having a good back and forth and dialogue. Because I knew going in, I was like, "Oh, you might upset some of the Austrians in the room." And he's just like, "I'm counting on it," as Oros told me. But it was very good to have this conversation about in the chat and whatnot between the audience and his presentation. And if the links in the description are wrong, Narco Republican, I'll fix them after the stream. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Afterwards, the last speech of the event, I'm almost an hour in now. Good Lord, I'm not even done. The last speech of the event, of course, came from Charlemagne, which was just ever so fitting because on the first night that we get there, we're all getting to know one another. Charlemagne, we get this chat bubble sent to us in Telegram where someone had said, "Oh, it was so nice to meet everybody, Turnup and Prudentialist and Radlib, and everyone can't stop staring at Charlemagne because he looks like based Jesus." Slightly heretical, but I couldn't help but laugh. But anyways, a well-dressed man. And Charlemagne goes up there and he starts talking about, the strategies of rural living, urban living, and why the suburbs are just this deracinated place where people can raise their kids. And, he's talking about what he's doing. He's talked about that he's planning to move out from where he lives and have land with some friends. And there were a lot of good ideas discussed. And I thought the fact that, this discussion was the problem of we should have people in the cities. We should have people how to live in them. You're going to need people that work in these institutions. Otherwise, what good are they going to be from? So all those things to keep in mind, which was really a delight listening to just Charlemagne break out the conversation about like, well, here are the practicalities of moving out to the middle of nowhere. You're going to need networks. You're going to need capital. You're going to need friends. You should integrate yourself into the local community, which is something I've been saying for a while. That if you do move to a small town, you should break bread with your neighbors. You should know about, the local fire department, things like that. So, I mean, a lot of great conversations and a lot of great ideas were discussed. One of them that I thought was really interesting came from Paul Fahrenheit. He would like this idea of throughout the country that we have this sort of network of hostels, based or right-wing hostels, that people on their travels can stay a night or stay for a few days and just rest and break bread with like-minded people. He almost compared it akin to like the Green Book for African Americans to travel in the South in the 1950s and 60s, which I thought was actually a rather fitting comparison. So, and then afterwards, Turnip did the same thing from the cigar stream, where he quoted Oliver Cromwell and told people, of course, to get out. And that was the end of the event. However, that wasn't over because Charlemagne, myself, Oros, Clossington, and then like 10 others or so. I think there was like 19 of us that got a hotel room for the night, and we just talked and chatted and got to know everyone a little bit better. For instance, I had a really nice long conversation with Red Hawk. I got to know a lot about, I got to know a lot about what he does and who he is as a guy, which I thought was a really like nice. It was nice to actually get to know these people because we had walked throughout the event, right? Like, oh, I need to talk to you, and I want to share this all with you, and quite a few. There's quite a few things that got us to get to know each other and all that. And I'm gonna try and share a meme as well, because one of the event organizers, of course, did not, like many of us who are right wing, did not that didn't come without heat, so to speak. Oops, sorry. And he brought, of course, this very large caliber revolver. I think it was like a 454. To which I couldn't help but notice that it's a very comically large revolver. So I thought, okay, well, let me do the Jonathan Bowden with the pose with it, and it turned out wonderful. So I'm gonna go share that on screen actually with you all. Oh, good lord, that is. Let's see here, save images. But yeah, here we go. Wonderful. Okay, so I can just share screen this way. But yeah, it was quite entertaining. So I'll share the meme. Why not? You already all know what I look like anyway. So here we go. So, there we go. So there's the meme, which has already been turned into a meme already, which was already hilarious, right? I think Evelyn has already made it into one, but I couldn't help but laugh that this is something that was made and that this is something that happened. So I figured I'd share that. And yeah, as Red Hawk says, that's definitely one way to clear them out. But yeah. And I think Evelyn has already shared on her Twitter account a more deep fried meme version, which is quite hilarious. But I wanted to share that because I thought it was absolutely funny. And then afterwards, the conversation went well into the night. And I think that we called Cringe Walker, of all people, at 3 a.m. just to, explain yourself about how you, about, what happened within your love life. And, just 19 reactionary men all in one room drinking and having a good time is just wonderful. So sharing, of course, with one another, all these wonderful things. So it was quite a good time. I'm trying to think, really the highlight though, I thought that was very funny, is that we went to a steakhouse. We all had food, and we had watched twice in a row these like little kids getting embarrassed because they had done the whole birthday thing at a restaurant where everyone brings it to the restaurant's attention, happy birthday or whatever. And we did the same thing to Oro's post because he actually celebrated his 23rd birthday on the trip on Thursday when he and I first started driving. And we told the waitresses, hey, our buddy down there, because there's like 19 of us on this all long stretched out table. By all means, our friend is having a birthday. If you could please just do that to him. And so that's exactly what we did. Is that we had the restaurant staff all just surround and give Oros, I think, some kind of ice cream float or whatever, and just mog him over that, which was quite funny. But yeah, it is his birthday, so by all means, tell Oros happy birthday in the chat. But yeah, so it was funny because it's just like one of the biggest things that like we all talked about was that it's gonna suck leaving, because it's just like, oh, you have to go back to your real job, you have to go back to everything else. And then I was like, yeah, that's true. I don't think I'm ever gonna forget this last weekend ever. And I hope that, and I know that we're gonna plan another one next year. There's no way that this wasn't successful, but I really couldn't help but realize that, oh yeah, I have to go back to work, and I have to go back into my normie job where I have to keep all of this like euphoria to myself. Like I remember when I told Turnip goodbye, and like we just hugged, and it was just a very emotional thing, which I didn't expect. It was out of nowhere, and it was really nice because it's like, I don't know when I'm going to see these people again. Although I think Turnip and I had met some people in like the Oklahoma City area, which was really awesome. So we might find a nice middle ground to go meet, which is always great to meet new friends. I got so many people's like numbers and things like that, so I can actually communicate with people and schedule streams and talk like that. And it does hit me that I don't know when I'm going to see like Charlemagne again. I don't know when I'm going to see Yiz again. I don't know when I'm going to see any of these guys again, which really sucks. And then, of course, on the drive home, I'm listening to the Sargon Apostolic Majesty and Panama Hat stream, and I'm like, okay, this isn't so bad. And then, of course, I'm taking the time to catch up with everybody's content, and then there's that infamous the cigar stream, that definitely killed my my post-conference high, listening to the Sargon debate defending liberal democracy. So it's just like, ugh. Back to real life, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it was so lovely to just like shake Radlib's hand in person. It was nice in my own parasocial high to shake Dave the Distributor's hand, because like I remember watching his content like when he started his Magic Word series forever ago, and it was just wonderful. And so it was just nice to see all the people that you kind of like got influenced by, which was just, whew. Oh, it was a really good time. So there really are no words. And now we have all this wonderful the hellscape of what's happening in Ukraine, and the uncertainty and the fog of war that comes behind that. So it's definitely a good way to kill the post-conference high. But I think what this was, and I was originally going to write about it, but I thought that it would just be much better to just stream instead of write it, was that it's a proof of concept that worked. We know that we can meet. We know that we can have these conversations with one another. We know that everyone came so well dressed. There was no one that was poorly dressed. No one looking very, shaggy or haggard. Everyone looked wonderful. Everyone was well dressed. Everyone was in suit and tie attire. Everyone looked good. And it was just fantastic. And hopefully, Lord willing, that we'll be able to do this again. Because again, we don't know what lies ahead in the future, which I think gives us a very good transition to move towards sort of the A&A portion, or the AMA Ask Me Anything portion, because I don't know what's going to lie ahead, and before a million questions start pouring in about Ukraine and Russia, I will say this was just that we did our sort of initial reaction stream to the events the other night, but what I will say is that I don't have all the answers for you. The fog of war is still happening. I'm not pro-Russian, and I'm not pro-regime either. And I do hope that hopefully the news I saw just before I went live talking about streams are talking about having a some sort of conference to discuss terms or to discuss peace. I do hope for, because no one wants bloodshed, and no one wants dead civilians, dead children, and so we must pray. We must pray for peace. But to I guess close out at the of the conference talk, is that wow, we all have this unified vision. We are finally no longer doing things just digitally, and that we are wanting to do serious work to engage. There were plenty of people that had ideas for progress, ideas for how to survive, how to transmit these lessons. So it was just very good, very, very good to see all those people, and they're all like-minded, which is always nice. And I think that the best part about it all, right? And I think Paul Fahrenheit said this, where it's just like there's 100 young, more or less, I think with the exception of a few people, there are 100 like white men in a room that all have this objective to do better and to survive. Like, you are terrifying the hell out of these liberals, these leftists, these progressives, which is very true. We all have this idea of what we want to accomplish. We all have this idea of what we want to be. So it was just perfect. And as Lane points out in the chat, not a single deceitful eye or dishonest chin in the place, which is very true. Yeah, and so for those I did not meet or I have not seen on stream or on camera, it's very weird, getting to realize, this is what people look like. I thought you were much older or something like that. So it was all very good. And then that's my wrap up for the event. And this is really just a proof of concept, and that we know that we're dealing with evil, and that we're doing we're doing a lot of good work, and we're all trying to move forward with the life that we want to have with everybody, which I think is the most important part. Someone in the chat, I'll just put it up on stream. You don't look like most Zoomers, which is impressive. Yes, I don't have that god-awful haircut. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But at the same time, I'm also like not, I don't know what the cutoff is for Zoomers anymore. My idiosyncratic way of telling the difference with Zoomers and millennials has been who has a living memory of 9/11, and I do. So I guess I consider myself like a very young millennial. Like, I'm not under 21, right? I'm things to just keep in mind, right? And now the chat is going nuts over the Zoomer perm comment, which is always funny. But whoever's not watching this live, I'm just gonna put this one up here because I still don't know what any of those words mean, and I don't want to know. And I think Klossington is right that we don't have any Zoomer perms at the conference. So yes, I think we're good there. Is it true that Charlemagne looks like He-Man? Oh, he definitely qualifies. If he's well on his way to looking like He-Man and everything, and that's perfect in my opinion. But yeah, no, it was just a fantastic time, and I think that's really the biggest takeaway that I wanted to take from the event. But I wanted to give like some commentary because now I've seen everyone else's like recaps, and I thought that there were some points that were made that were. One second. Sorry about that. I had had a call there. But no, I mean the biggest takeaway I saw from like the distributist is that it was like a place of warmth, respite, and a meeting of warmth in winter. And I thought that was a very good takeaway and a very good point to make, that this winter that we're in, I don't think you could even call it a winter, was that it was I think we're in sort of like a little ice age, which of course I think would be the better point to have, because the little ice age lasted a while and it was during the early modern era, so why not have that in mind? So I think what was worth pointing out, of course, was that it's going to be here for a while. And I mean, if you buy into the sort of the Spenglerian analysis of winter, and the winter period, they say that's when Caesar comes, but things are like, I think this is where Not Me, Not You is very right, that things are getting bad, but they haven't gotten the worst, which I think is very, very true. And I think the last 2 years, especially with sort of the certain respiratory viruses, are proof of that. Because what have we seen? We've seen the complete obliteration of the idea of civil rights, or the idea of a proper government that is representative to us. And then we've also started to see a lot of the racialized aspects of our government, really come forth into fruition. And what I mean by that is, like, right, who got to receive certain antibody treatments first? Well, white people, you have to have a condition. Everyone else can go to the front of the line, which thankfully there's been pushback. But if this is a sign that of what's to come, then I imagine that things will get much, much worse in the future. And so all of us coming here after watching all of this evil, and I think Morgoth has said it best, that only a god can save us. And maybe that's true. Maybe that is the case. But at the same time, I couldn't help but think, if that, what do we do to survive? Depending on how you read your eschatology, and depending on how long the trials and tribulations last, it may be a very, very long time. And what do we do in the meantime to survive it? Besides, to harden our souls and to harden our hearts and to prepare for what's to come. I do think that it will be very important for us to realize that there's a lot of work that has to be done. And I think what came out of this event was recognizing that. Not just that we had a conference, or that we all had this sort of masturbatory, oratory before the podium and before the crowd. I don't think anyone was like that. I don't think anyone was really particularly enjoying themselves giving up these conversations. And we have to have belief that what we are doing will make something last, and make something of ourselves, and make something of our communities. And so maybe I don't think we're in winter. I think we're at the beginning of an ice age. I do think that we need to stop viewing this decline as things that maybe this is where I'm reading too much into Ride the Tiger, where like opposition may seem fruitless. And I think that was really the big positive takeaway from all this, was that the recognition that things suck and that we need to do something about it, and more particularly, we need to survive as a network. And even now, I'm seeing in Telegram chats from the speakers that were there, hey, we should probably have finding ways to communicate with one another, in case like internet connections cut or we're banned from platforms and things like that, which I wholeheartedly agree with. But we have these tools. And survival, I don't mean like you're going to build a tent or get in your bunker and do blast from the past. Because no. No regime, no empire lasts forever. Good regimes plan to last forever, so it tells their enemies that they can't outlast it. And I thought that what was really good about all of this was that, we want to outlast this. And until that Caesar figure comes, or until God comes down and strikes down the wicked, or burns another, Sodom and Gomorrah down, which it would be nice, but I don't want anyone to look back and see anyone have their wife turned into a pillar of salt. And those things those things come to mind. So some key takeaways that I also had wrote down is that you do need to have, I think, a good way of language. I like the idea of mimetic curatives, as Yiz the Eunuch put it. These are sort of the antidote to mind viruses. Which is something that we're starting to see become seriously discussed, and this is something that I'm actually very glad that AA said, which was that the regime that you need to take down is the boomer truth regime, which I wholeheartedly agree with, because until you can break the sort of the memeplex that has infected almost every consumer boomer and liberal in the United States, then it's not going to really do you much if you want to offer a positive alternative to what currently exists. So breaking down that culture through memetics and through language and through content, as well as actual networks and feedback from fellow people that are creators, I think is a very good start. Other things I thought was interesting was like, and this is something that I thought Red Hawk brought up, believe it or not, that I thought was interesting. And this sort of plays into the memetics thing, was like the frame. You know, what do you want to come first? And right now, I think everyone right now, what comes first in this framing is survival. Everyone wants to live. Everyone wants to win. Everyone wants to make sure that we don't, you know, fall prey to cancellation, or, you know, getting our bank accounts frozen. Many of us in America, or at least in these spheres, yet, and I emphasize yet, have yet to have that problem. In Europe, definitely not so much, and for some Americans, also not so much. But these are things to keep in mind. And then I suppose the other thing that really came to my mind from both this event and others' conversations about it is that I suppose the biggest takeaway I really thought from all of this is that you're not alone. And this is something that, of course, Don the Pleb had a video on. This is something that a lot of us have talked about, and just about how crappy things have gotten. But you're not alone. And I think that that was the big post-conference high. That was the real takeaway from the conference, was that, you know, you're a human being, that there are people that are just like you. Oh my God, you know, like we're all here, you know, like this is not just an abstract autistic online community. And I really appreciated that. The question becomes, how do you take the friendships and the bonds, and how do we go forward? There was a lot of conversation about wisdom, passing it down, the metaphysics of it all. But if you want to clear them out, you know, we need to be competent. We need to have networks that you know, make it out to ourselves. We need to have the ability to, you know, help and rely on one another. That's why I like the idea of the based hostels. That's why I like the idea of the oh, what's the word I'm looking for? That's why I really like the idea of, you know, mailing lists or working together in sort of a capital fashion. And there were people there at the event that were like, hey, we're working on this project so we can network and identify where major donors could come from to help support capital projects that aren't necessarily completely, you know, left wing or paused, as it were, which I thought was just delightful. So there were people there that were actually doing something serious. And in fact, one of the gentlemen there, talking about online security, and I really wanted to share this. In fact, I wrote the book down, or at least wrote, if it's a book or a paper, I don't know. But there was a gentleman there who had, you know, studied terrorism and security, and he does works with that for Amazon as well. And he had said the Open Source Intelligence course by Michael Bazzell, Bazzel, or two L's at the end. I'm not sure. If he's in the chat, please correct me and put it in the chat if you could. But he said, oh, the Open Source Intelligence course by Michael Bazzell would be a good place to start, in part because that will allow people to really actually protect themselves online. And that helps a lot, I think. And then, of course, came the conversation, of course, where about faith and why it's important to keep it. And I thought that's why I appreciated Anglo-Ortho's speech so much, is because it was about the question that you should always ask anybody is just, what are your first principles? Where do you come from to get these beliefs? And I thought that was very, very good. Because if you don't answer that question, you know, it'll be very harder to answer the tough questions later down the line. But Mr. Your name is quite funny, Suck-O-Rama. How does one find the spiritual aspect of Christianity? I see the traditions, the community, the humanity, but struggle with the faith. I guess what I'm asking is how do you deal with spiritual cynicism? That's a very good question. And I'm sure that you're not the first person to ask that question, and I'm glad that you asked it. I myself grew up as a military brat, so church was sort of a Sunday culture. It was more like a social club where parents and officers and non-coms would always point out to one another, "Oh, I didn't see you there last Sunday." So it wasn't really about the faith. It was more so about your appearance in the on-post community. And so because of that, my parents were a little dissuaded. So for instance, like my mother's a dyed-in-the-wool Southern Baptist. My father's a Methodist, but he's not, a religion. He's religious, but I think due to years of being in the military, he doesn't get to express himself, which is a shame. But I know that's like the case for many vets. And I came back to Christianity, and I came back to my faith, if I can call it that. My faith was there. I guess it wasn't something I took seriously. It came to me in the hospital because I had a post-operative infection. Actually, when this all started in June of 2020, when the kidney failure finally hit me, kind of told myself I should probably get good with my creator in case anything happens. And I was rather youthfully nonchalant about it. And later that year, I was going to do a surgery to get dialysis at home, where they put a catheter in your abdomen and you plug it into a machine. It fills up with a sugar solution. It's called peritoneal dialysis. You can look it up. Anyways, the first attempt didn't go so well, and I had a post-operative infection, and I was in the hospital for like 2 weeks. Almost died. I didn't know if I was going to live for the first few days. And there I had a conversation with a priest. And that priest, lo and behold, was an Orthodox priest. And as many Orthodox churches will tell you, there's always something on their website, or what they'll always tell, non-Orthodox Christians is just come and see. And I was very ambivalent about doing it while I was on dialysis, very ambivalent about, religion in general. And it took me a very long time. And I asked questions about it because I didn't know anything about it. And I started reading on history and understanding tradition and community. But faith is different for everybody. And for me, my faith and understanding that, as a Christian, that this is a man who had died for the sins of all of mankind. And, that's a very powerful thing to know that I am this like wretched, I'm not perfect. I'm not really, I don't think of myself as a worthy person. And to recognize this man and his teachings and the fulfilling of the word, and that, the word became flesh, that there's prophecy has been fulfilled, is a very powerful thing. And I don't think that you can do it on faith alone. You can't just say, "Oh, I accept," in my personal belief. I think that's why you need to have community in the tradition and the church. But I'm not here to start an interdenominational fight. I really don't like those. But I took my local church's advice, and one day I came and saw, and it was right then and there, I think, for me, that I realized that maybe there's truth, and that my faith, it's there for a reason. And this is getting oddly personal, but I guess for the spiritual cynicism and the doom scrolling and all of the hate and the disgusting things that we see, whether it's from teachers or government, our neighbors, the world, I know at the end of the day, God wins. I know at the end of the day that judgment comes, and I must do my best, not only as a believer, but also as a human being. I had a conversation with a libertarian gentleman a while ago, where he had said, I got to focus on me. I got to just do me. And I thought that was really I didn't like that take. I said, I get taking care of yourself. And by all means, you should, by all means, focus on getting yourself into a situation to where you can help others. But I said after that, if I'm in a position where I could take care of someone or bring them under the fold to learn a trade or to help around the garden, I couldn't just let them flounder. There are people worth saving, and people should be saved, and we are saved, but there are better ways to do it. And our God, of course, by all means, is a merciful one, and we pray to him. and we listen, and it requires humility. I have no control over what's happening in Ukraine or Russia right now. I'm not the Secretary of State of the U.S., but I pray for peace, and I have faith that this isn't going to end with someone pressing the red button. But spiritual cynicism comes from mentorship and having people within that community. My church is incredibly, welcoming, whether it's the ethnic portion or the large number of converts or even people my age. I'm 26 that are in the church with their wives and children. There is a better way out there, and it doesn't have to just be the materialistic, the doom scrolling. There's a better way to do it. And that's I struggle with it every day, but tradition, prayer, fasting, community, mentorship. I still have a friend who's been an Orthodox Christian for years that I talk to and I ask questions along with my priest. But I think I've ranted a little long enough on that. So I hope that answers your question. So let's see what other questions there are. But yeah, so that's my that's my story. I'm sure that there's a few of them. But I know that there were a few people that talking about a few other things. But yeah. Aussie, oh, that's a good question. Do you ever see yourself coming to a UK event? I do not know about the travel aspect of it all. I know AA did not want to travel and come to the United States because he has made the decision to not be vaccinated. I have made the decision to not be vaccinated, so I don't know how that will work. So I would love to go actually to the UK event. There are a lot of my viewers actually, and my subscribers, I've learned it's split almost 50-50. I think it's like 60-40 of American to European. So yeah, I would love to go to a UK event. But in the long run, yes, I would love to go. There are plenty of people in the UK sphere I would love to go to. And for those of you commenting on the mustache, no, I couldn't pull it off as well as say Anglo Ortho or others. I know Anglo Ortho does his streams with his camera on, so you can tell he's sort of like bizarro. Oh Lord, you're just Mr. Ortho, forgive me. But he's like bizarro hipster, or he's the anti-hipster because he's this married man with children who does the prayers and fasts and goes to church, and but he looks like with his mustache, it's quite like the sort of stereotypical hipster mustache that you would get. He's sort of like, as Oropost put it, the hipster reactionary. I think that's a really great phrase. Hipster reactionary, or reactionary hipster. Because that's how he was dressed, and his outfit worked so well. It was quite the nice, quite the good time. So yeah, he's got the amazing beard and mustache. This is the best I can pull off. It'll never get any better. I promise you that. So yeah. Yeah, there we go. Let's see here. Glow in the Dark asks thoughts on tie knots, and why did I go for narrow one? Well, this one is a narrow tie, and I'm quite the narrow person. I didn't want to go with a 4 in hand because with how this tie is and its material, it is just quite the hard to undo. So I did I think it's the half Windsor, right? It really depends on your shirt collar, actually, I think. Typically a half Windsor is good for like more narrow collars like this. If it's a wider one, I think the full Windsor just allows you to look based as hell and do it that way. So things to keep in mind. But actually, I'm not really a necktie person. Throughout college and all the times I did like speech and debate, I was just a bow tie person, which of course was always funny because I get asked all the time, "Are you a libertarian?" Which I always thought was very funny. But yeah, I just chose this because I'm a very thin person. This is a very slim tie, and of course it's a narrow collar. So half Windsor is what I went with. But yeah. Red Hawk saying that Prudentialist is our very own mustache man. I don't think I'm that far there. But yeah, full Windsor is usually what I would prefer if it's a wider collar. We need to reclaim the bow tie from Bill Nye and the Lolberts. Well, the man who's already doing that good fight is Radical Liberation. He is the king of the bow tie. So we have someone fighting that good fight. But eventually, I might post a picture. I did a selfie, of course, to just show friends and family that I was alive. Of me in my hotel room with a bright red bow tie from Friday for the social hour. So you can enjoy that. I might post that somewhere. I'm still getting used to the fact that I'm showing my face and that I'm actually having these conversations with you all like that. So the memes have already been made. I'm still getting used to that. Sorry, I have to share this one because there are a lot of men who I think who actually don't know how to tie many knots, and I think that would be something that maybe Red Hawk or any of us in these spheres could do, which is just teach men how to do these things. You wear a half Windsor because you prefer it. I wear a half Windsor because I'm too retarded to tie anything else. We are not the same. Yeah, so I mean, we've got people that are wearing bow ties that aren't Lolberts or libertarian or Bill Nye types or the Trust of the Science guys. But yeah, no, I mean, it was just a pleasure to get to know everybody, and I really do miss out on the chance I didn't get to talk to Angela Ortho more and have conversations with him because I'd love to get to know him better. But yeah, it was nice to meet all these different people. And it wasn't even just the situation of just wanting to talk to your fellow creators, but it's also the getting to know just the regular people, the attendees, because the nice thing is that for those of us who do these streams and are in this sort of in this circle, this network, we have the pleasure of getting to talk to one another before show, after show, camera on, camera off, and excuse me. And I don't get a chance to talk to guys like you in real life, which I mean, for instance, I got to meet Symbols, who is one of my patrons, and I got to learn and get to know him a little better and hear his story. And yeah, this is something that actually happened at the event. Was that it was in a conversation. I don't remember who had brought it up, but some guy had mentioned that his mother had discovered Bronze Age pervert before he did, which I thought was quite funny. We all had a good laugh at that. But yeah, I mean, that's some stuff there. No, MG, I've not heard of Anglo-Libertarian, but if you're telling me that he's sort of a lolbert, then I'm not gonna. I'm gonna live without it. Oh, this is an interesting question. Knight Rider of Albion asks, do I watch any gentlemen's attire channels like Allison Kirby? No, I don't actually. My idea of men's style and whatnot came from the fact I started wearing suits and dress attire in high school because I did speech and debate and Model UN and Toastmasters and things like that. And so public speaking is something I've always done, which always requires formal attire. So you buy your suit jackets and whatnot. You go to your basic men's store, Brooks Brothers or whatever. I can't afford Brooks Brothers, but you can always ask them for styling advice. I don't make that much money. And you just sort of start Googling what works well together, and you start like Google Image is a nice way to be like, that's aesthetically pleasing. That's nice to the eye. So just years of doing it and figuring everything out the hard way, I suppose, is how I did it. But no, I don't really watch any of the gentleman's attire or anything like that. I think the most recent thing that I've ever looked up for like men's attire is just like mustache care, because typically I don't like how this looks. People have said it's okay. I can't grow a beard to save my life, so there goes my chances of working in a monastery, which is unfortunate. But joking aside, no, I haven't watched anything like that. Let's see here. Yeah, no, I watched the stream in full this morning while I was working. Yeah, he went from being on top of the world Monday to being unable to contend with Sargon by Wednesday, and that was basically everybody. I watched it, and I was actually planning. I might finish it. I might do it as a write-up, as an after-action report, because I mean, this is the reason why I will never do internet blood sports or debates or anything like that. The only debate I've ever done online has been the one on Apostolic Majesty's channel about the American Revolution, because it was structured like an actual debate where you have your constructives, your rebuttals, your cross-examination periods, and things like that. So the debate was frustrating, very frustrating, to say the least. But yeah, that was something that came to mind. And a lot of the people that are in the crowd that are saying, step over him, or that he's not engaging in good faith. What I really can't stand is that, think about how many people found AA, or how many people found sort of this sphere of the right through him. Lord knows I did. And I thought that Orrin McIntyre had the best tweet. And this isn't even about Sargon. This was about Curtis Yarvin. Is that, it's important that if you move on from a thinker, or if you move on from someone who influenced you, that you don't look back on them and that you tarnish them, because you were once someone who read from them and learned from them. And it's good to recognize where you came from and whose shoulders that you once stood on. And that, to me, I think is a very good take on the subject, because I still have a lot of respect for Carl, like a lot of us do. Was it frustrating? Yeah. Should it have been moderated, as Anglo Ortho points out in the chat? Yes, it should have been. So yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree. So yeah, that would be my take on the issue there. That would be my point there. And I mean, you don't have to just be denigrating. I don't think that that's the case, but you don't have to be, I think, we don't have to torch the guy either. And that's my perspective, is though I find people like Jordan Peterson frustrating, because he has like the most Gnostic view of Christianity ever. So I mean, all of us, I think, should be that we've graduated from these people, but and appreciate where we came from. But we're going to have these fundamental differences, and when these differences arise, or someone is being obfuscating, then yeah, I mean, that's an issue. And who knows, maybe his views have to be moderated due to his business. I'm not one to speak for him, but those are just some thoughts I have on that issue. So Vingel says that Moldbug had no influence on me, so I will say what I feel I must. Yeah, I didn't discover Moldbug until much later in my political evolution. I started out very much as your stereotypical lolbert in high school and in early parts of college. It wasn't until actual politics and actual engaging in the system did I slowly start getting more and more to the right on these issues. So yeah, it is definitely a problem. But yeah, those are things to keep in mind. And the other big takeaway I thought from this event, and maybe this is where I still have hope, is that there were so many incredibly well-read gentlemen, so many people citing things in their queues where there were events, or that there were things that we enjoyed, that we cited books and whatnot. People come from all sorts of different places. Like Oros Post mentioned in the chat that that he was a commie, so I came from a Lolbert background, and just people go in their different ways, and people have their own evolution. And Red Hawk pointed it out. Yeah, Charlemagne said it best in that debate. I do wish that Sargon would take us more seriously, because so many people at the event were talking about how much we like him, and we do, because a lot of us come from that pipeline, like I mentioned. So something to keep in mind. And then I think what the event shows is so many of us have projects that we're working on, or have been working on things in our own local communities. Like I mentioned in the Q&A session that I worked on making sure that Confederate monuments weren't taken down. And this was while I was on dialysis, right? So there are things that we can do locally, and I'm a big advocate for that. I think the Catholics have a term called subsidiarity about where the most influence and power is locally. So things to keep in mind. So yeah, I think that's important that we do those things, because there are so many guys at the event that were just like, I have these projects that I'm working on. I want to map out where the elites are. I want to map out where the funding is. We should take advantage of all these documents that are public. And yeah, I think that that's great. And I think that we should start being more grounded and being more serious. And I think that there was something that Lambda had pointed out that I thought was really, really powerful about like showing your face and things like that, was that, and it relates to something that Radlib had said at the event. One of the pieces of wisdom that Radlib had said is that don't use allegory or don't use poor analogies to make your point, because it is an insult to your intelligence and the analysis that you're trying to create. And I thought that that was very powerful. And it's also very anti-boomer truth regime, because everything is compared to the mid-century Germans, and that's awful. Although I can't help but chuckle that he wanted that Vladimir Putin used the phrase "to Nazify" in regards to Ukraine. Be concise, but don't be pithy. But be conscientious of what you want to get across. And that was something that Lambda had said not too long ago, that when you show your face and you show these things, that you're now physically putting your face to your words, and it allows you to police what you have to say, and also to think twice about what you want to put out. I thought that was very powerful, because even myself, I try my best now not to shitpost as much or laugh at chat while I have the camera on or anything like that. So all these things that come in mind. But the event itself was a wonderful time, and I think that it is proof that we can accomplish great things, and that we're not alone. I mean, in America, the nation is huge. I love the phrase that in the United States, 100 years is a long time, but to a European, 100 miles is forever, which is very true. Like, I drove 10 hours to get to the event space from where I live. And if you drive 10 hours through Europe, you've crossed through like 5 or 6 different countries. And I would know I've done that, or at least with family, and growing up and things like that. So it all helps. But I think that the biggest takeaway is that once you're in a room together, once you're actually no longer in the online sphere, and it's no longer a Discord call, a Telegram chat, or even just the YouTube comment section, it's really powerful to know that there are men that are goal-oriented, that everything is happening, and I'm very happy with it, because there are people out there that want to work, that want to get things done, and so I'm very happy about that. And we talk about these positive visions, and this is where I think Turnips should really expand on his Confederacy model, not like Dixie, but it's not as nice as that would be. And I say that as with family who fought, but this sort of Confederation model where we don't have to worry about big tent purity spiraling, and where things are decentralized, as Charlemagne had mentioned. I thought that that's a good idea, because we are going to encounter people that we're going to disagree with. We are going to consider ourselves, all those things. So why not just take it upon ourselves to have these memorandums of understanding and try our best to pursue projects that work for us locally and work for us for what we want to get done on both a national, state, and local level. So I'm very, very happy with how this event has gone. The takeaways from everyone's speeches, I mean, I did not have a single bad conversation. I did not have a single bad discussion. I didn't have a bad, there wasn't a bad speech. There were, like tics in public speaking or presentation, and that's just me from a public speaker standpoint. But like, fantastic topics, fantastic discussions, and whatnot. And as Fokron points out, he's still not back from home. So Fokron, for instance, he lives in a very far away part of the country, and he's just been sort of driving throughout the U.S. on a road trip of sorts. So. But again, that was the gentleman that I actually had lunch with before the event even started, and I was so glad to have that conversation and get to know him. And the Mad Mercenaries in the chat, hello. But yeah, to give, I guess, sort of to get towards the end here, because I didn't want to talk forever. It's still the middle of the day, and I do have plans this evening. Was that this was a proof of concept done right. The only thing that I would add for the next event is that we get some kind of notebook for all of us to write down our thoughts and events, because like I said, I wrote everything down on note cards. So I think that having like an actual notepad for all of us to write on, so we're not on our phones or anything like that. I was unfortunately on my phone either to read the text for the Cigar Stream Live, or just I had a phone call that I had to take. So I mean, everything was good, and there will be hopefully another one, and I'm sure that, and there are those in the UK as well. So everything's doing well in that viewpoint. Uh, oh, I had a floundering introduction with you. Oh, this is from Frito. I'll definitely read this one. I had a floundering introduction with you, Prudentialist. Asked about your transplant and then bailed on it. Well, and then bailed on it. Oh, well, I mean, I can tell that story if you'd like. I mean, it's not. I don't usually like to talk about it because I don't want anyone to do the whole like "woe is me" shtick. I'm not like that kind of guy. But I mean, I am a. It's been a little over 8 months now. I'm very lucky. So life and God have been very good to me. I'm very blessed. And actually, I believe, let me pull out my church calendar here. If I recall correctly, I believe it is going to be Memorial Saturday at Vespers. So that'll be nice to bring up those who have been lost and things like that. So yeah. Let's see here. What if I go through chat and see if I've missed anything major? Let's see. Oh, that's why you bailed on the subject. Oh, it's no big deal. I mean, I got it 8 months ago. It was part of my life. It was caused by an issue when I was a kid that went undetected until I was 6 years old. The damage was already done. I had 18 good years of health and things like that. I did a whole fishing video on it. I think it was just about it's one of the real talks from like 8 months ago. So that can give you an idea. And I talked about it there. I'm very, very blessed. And the fact that I know the deceased donor's name is even more powerful. The priest reads out his name at prayer now at the liturgy, which is very meaning and moving to me. So yeah, it's not a big deal. I mean, and to be honest, that's why I enjoy the super chats. That's why I enjoy my Subscribe Star, because I don't really keep any of this money. It always goes to my medications or my medical bills. So you guys make my life a lot easier, because I'm just a lower middle class office schlub. So yeah, do not worry. But I'm going to open up Studio now and get to the super chats, because I don't want to be here all day, as I mentioned. I think I've taken up more than your time. And I know that shortly, in a couple hours, Yiz and Oros Post will be doing their own event recap, so we'll get to have more. Geomancer asks, was there any swag? There was plenty of swag there, so to speak. There were all the Imperium Press books. And if you go to the Scyldings website and go to events, you yourself, for I believe I think it's $65. Yep, $65 plus shipping. You yourself can get a copy of the event book. So if you already know what the UK event book looks like, the same thing will happen for you there. And if you were at the event, you got special hardcover editions of Indo-European folk tales, De Maistres' works, and Robert Filmer's Patriarcha. And so yeah, there was definitely swag at the event. And it was really nice because they had these nice plastic lanyards with your a plastic card where you could write your name in Sharpie. And it was nice because all the speakers had one in white, the organizers had one in black, and everyone else had one in blue. It's very nice and color-coded. AA was dressed for the occasion. Yes, Vinkel, he was. Forged, did I get those books in the end? Well, it's a shame because I owned Patriarcha and I owned De Maistre already, so I had to get a copy of the Folk Tales one, which will be a very good read. So yeah, no, unless you're referring to the books that you sent me, I got those. But yeah, AA's speech was remote during the live stream. I'm pretty sure he was sitting at his desk. But before the desk, before AA appeared, we're in this giant monitor, and everyone's sitting there, sort of like the Apple 1984 commercial. And AA is before AA comes on, the screen just has a picture of Emperor Palpatine, which I couldn't help but laugh because that's very fitting. Because he's very sheaved pilled, coming on as Emperor Palpatine, the Dark Lord of the Sith. So that was quite funny. Have I read the Alexander Adams books yet? No, fortunately, Ashes, I have not. Actually, I haven't taken a lot of time to read. I have actually scheduled time on my phone calendar to read, but lately I've just been reading my study Bible. But yeah, no, it was all wonderful. The event itself was incredibly well done, well organized. Everyone could speak. Everyone did a great job. And all of even the Q&A session. Sometimes it wasn't even just you know, questions. It was just comments or praise or things to add on to, which was really nice. And then the other thing to keep in mind, I thought was really good, was there was this gentleman. I won't say his name, but it was a meme. Every time he would ask a question, he would come up and he would say like, "Hello, my name is," and then he would add some sort of little spiel about what he was going to ask. So if someone was talking about like gardening, or if someone was talking about I think it was with Red Hockey, it went up and he says, "Hi, so and so here, Sigma male appreciator, and I had this question for you." And he did it every single time throughout the event, and it was just so good that this man could keep a running gag going and turn himself into a meme, literally within within like a day. And he would just say like, "My name is," and then he wouldn't say his name. Yeah, oh, there you go. Someone asked, he brought it in there. His name was Ford. He does apparently the Iron Age Archive podcast, and he was just doing that, and he was just like, "Hello, Ford here, Sigma male appreciator," or I think with my speech, it was just like, "Yes, Ford, like internet addict here." It's just very good that he could keep this going every single question. I think he asked a question at every Q&A more than once. He would ask once or twice, and it would be a different kind of little bit every time he introduced himself, which was just very good. It was quite enjoyable. So yeah, no, it's just very, very, very well done. But there were a couple of super chats that came in, so let's go knock those out and then get started. Also, thank you to everybody who shared or tuned in to that wonderful sort of live reaction to the Ukraine stuff, because 10K views plus it's monetized. Oh, chef's kiss. So let's go to supers. And let's open everything up. Alrighty. So let's see here. Alrighty. So Monothalos for €5. Certain texts are still not available in English. We need to push for translations and have them published. The same with texts that are just rare. Yes, there's like that with a lot of thinkers, whether it's like de Maistre or Schmidt or Spengler, that I know who still have essays that haven't been always, had it translated. For instance, whether you like him or not, Carlsbad on Twitter has been doing the great work on his blog to translate the works of von Haller, which I'm like, thank God, because I don't speak the original languages that were translated into. So I mean, it was very good to have the Carl Ludwig von Haller being translated. And there are people that even Skeptical Waves has had essays from Schmidt on that have been translated by amateurs that speak German. So I mean, we'll need to do more to do that. And I think that if you speak another language, it behooves you to take the time and effort to translate that stuff into English. Let's see here. All right, another one. Focron from $5 US. Turtleneck futurism will prevail. So Focron was at the event and he wore a turtleneck along with his suit jacket. And I noticed that Keith Woods has also been wearing a turtleneck. So maybe we can take the turtleneck away from weird pedos like Michel Foucault or other tech weirdos like Steve Jobs and make it a right-wing thing. So yeah, there you go, turtleneck futurism. And then Oros Post for $10 US. Thank you so much. He says, Prudentialist has an immense skill at public speaking. He must make a course so that we can learn. So you're not the first person who had said that. I know that Anglo Ortho was very kind to give the commentary and say that it was a well done speech, which I'm thankful for. So to give anyone who was there at the event wondering, like, how do you do that? I did 8 years of speech and debate in high school and college. I have these lovely pewter metal plates. I'm not going to I'm not going to show you, not to dox myself. I mean, I've shown my face, so I don't need you knowing everything. But I have these lovely pewter metal plates that say I'm really good at talking out of my ass. By that, I was very good at the limited prep events, impromptu, impromptu speaking, and extemporaneous speaking, which is how I also got my focus in foreign relations, because extemporaneous speaking always gave you a focus on domestic affairs, but as well as international politics. And I always liked picking the international politics one because my strategy was, the Americans don't know jack crap about geography or foreign affairs. They don't know anything, right? Because Americans only learn geography when the United States goes to war. And couldn't help but laugh at that. So that was my strategy. It's like, if I become the foreign policy expert, then I'll really have it in the bag when I'm not talking about domestic issues. So yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. Whether I did policy debate or parley or anything, it was always a good time. But yeah, that's where I learned it. If I might do a course. I don't know how I would even begin, because I've been doing it for like 8 years and having it drilled into me. So who knows? But I might make a course. Maybe I'll make it a foundations to public speaking. We can add that to the academic agency. So, so that's something to keep in mind. I know that there was this other. I think that's it for the super chats. But there was one other question. It's from Trado 2015. What do I think about the AFPAC? I don't really follow Fuentes. I never got into that crowd. I mean, Nick, for all of his optics issues, is apparently very resilient. I think the fact that he wants to have something, in the in real life and on the ground to do things, then yeah, I mean, like, good for him. But at the same time, I'm a little concerned because if you're gonna have like Dinesh D'Souza speak it there, this is the man that canceled Sam Francis from writing at the Washington Examiner because he went to an American Renaissance conference. So I'm wary that the GOP might eat him alive. But while I'm here, and I still have about 120 of you watching, here are two things. I'm just going to give some shout outs. I will fix the links in the description because I did copy them from the distributists, and I'll fix those links when that's done. But at the same time, I wanted to just shout out a few people that were not at the event but are doing good work. So for instance, there's Mr. A. Walrus in the chat. If you don't know anything about like Scandinavian politics and what life is like over there, please subscribe to him. One of the things that I had talked about was at the event was about mentorship and promoting people. So we need to promote others that are doing their own work or offer their own areas of expertise. And it doesn't have to just be on politics or commentary. I think that it also means, like, if you have a background in automotive engineering or repairing cars, you should be trying to schedule people over and teaching people these skills, because as cars become more and more reliant on computers and chips, you may not have the ability to fix that, but you should definitely have the capability of fixing your car or changing a tire. So many people don't know how to do these things, and I think that that's important. So if you have those skills, then by all means share them. And as Vingel will point out in the chat, I mean, he's been on a few streams over there that he does good work. And Aura's Post will tell you HVAC is the same way. Everything is smart nowadays. And Aura's Post works in the trades, and so I mean, people who work in trades, and that was the nice thing about the event. Everyone was so diverse in their backgrounds, whether they were lawyers or engineers or programmers or HVAC repair guys. We're going to need all of them. And if you have skills that you can transfer to other people, by God, give these contact information, see who's close by, and start setting up classes. Because if we can do that, then we're going to be a lot more resilient. So yeah, like even Knight Rider of Albion in the chat, like if you have a mechanical know-how of something, pass that knowledge down, because God knows that it's not being passed down at schools, and it's not being passed down at by parents and whatnot. So those things matter, whether it's old tech, new tech, whatever it's going to be. If you know how to do these things, share it along. So final thoughts here. The event was really good. I hope that we have another one next year. I think that we will, and that we should be hoping to attend. I hope to give another speech, and that you should buy the event books, and that A lot of good work lies ahead of us. And now that we've all met each other in the real world, know that this is feasible, that it's possible, no matter how crappy things get, I know that I'm not alone, and that's a very, very real thing. So, with that, ladies and gentlemen, the last thing that I will shill is that this Sunday, shortly after church, I believe at 12:30 or 12:30 my time, so 1:30 Eastern, we will have Conscious Caracol Ernst van Zyl of AfriForum on, and he's going to be telling us about the Julius Malema trial that AfriForum is also a party of, and why it's important for those of you outside of South Africa to seriously understand its importance and why we should be paying attention. I know that the Ukraine thing is big right now, but I'm going to wait a week until we can have a much more concrete picture. Everything's still in the fog of war. But that's what I want to do is we'll have him on this Sunday. We're going to learn a lot about what's going on in South Africa, and then we'll be back with regular scheduled content, which includes my video on analog horror. So until then, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you all have a blessed Friday, a great weekend, and after liturgy this Sunday, I'll see you all live on stream. Take care, everybody, and most importantly, be prudent.